Spotlight panel. Tonight we're featuring electrical engineering. My name is Diane Yoon. I'm one of the career advisors in the Viterbi Career Connections office. This is a monthly panel that we feature where we bring back alumni from that specific major that's being spotlighted. So tonight, like I mentioned, is electrical engineering. So we feature our alumni to talk about their professional experiences and how they navigated their time here as a student and how they transitioned to what they're doing now. So they'll also be talking about industry trends and any questions that you have for them. So you should all have a bio sheet in front of you with their short bios, and so make sure you just take a look over that if you have any specific questions you want to ask the panel. So this event is for all majors, so even if you're not an EE major, it's still open to everyone, because we want you to just gain an opportunity to hear from alumni to talk about their experiences, and it may help you, figure out whether you may want to pursue a specific career path. So just curious, how many of you are not EE majors? Okay. Oh, okay.
The CCS kind of.
Yeah, if you're not electrical engineering. Okay, there's a few of you, so I'm assuming the rest of you are EE. How many of you are first year students? Okay, second year, third year, fourth year? Great, yeah, I mean, it's open to all undergrads. We do tend to have more first and second year students attend, just because, this is the time where you're trying to figure out your major, and it helps to hear from people who have gone through kind of what you're going through now, to come back and talk about their experiences and to hear from their perspective of, what they're doing. So we have a great panel for you tonight. In a minute, I'm going to have them each introduce themselves and share about what they're doing and just some of their experiences as a student. But I just want to let you know that this is really an opportunity for you to ask your questions. So it's going to be pretty much an open Q&A session where they'll just answer questions that you guys have. Okay, there's no formal format, just maybe a time of Q&A. So for the panelists, if you can just introduce yourself by saying your name, your current role, when you graduated, and also what you were involved with as a student here. So we can start with you, Rachel.
Okay. Good evening. My name is Rachel Morford. I am currently working as the Systems Director for the Advanced Extremely High Frequency Satellite, the space segment piece specifically for the Aerospace Corporation. Aerospace is a not-for-profit FFRDC that advises the Air Force on technical issues. So I graduated from USC with my bachelor's and my master's degrees in electrical engineering in 2007 and went to work at Aerospace immediately after that. While I was at USC, I was a freshman academy coach. I actually swam for the swim team for a couple of years. I was really involved in the Society of Women Engineers and IEEE, as well as being a Viterbi student ambassador. So, anything else?
Oh, that was everything. Great, thank you.
Hi everyone, my name is Jasmine Naseri. I graduated from USC in 2016 with my bachelor's in electrical engineering. I now work for Northrop Grumman in Manhattan Beach as a systems engineer. I don't think Diane knew this when she chose both Rachel and I on this panel, but I also work on the Advanced Extremely High Frequency satellite, but on the Northrop side. So we actually build the payload, and then Lockheed is the prime contractor, and they build the bus, and together the payload and the bus make the space vehicle. So right now, I'll go into it more later, but we have 4 satellites up in space, and we have 2 more launching in about the next year or so, and together they'll form a nice 6-satellite constellation.
My name is Edward Gonzalez, or Ed Gonzalez, and I graduated with my bachelor's from USC in 2010, and then I did a progressive degree program, so I got my master's in 2011 in electrical engineering with an emphasis in electrophysics and electromagnetics. When I was at USC, I was in the student radio station, so I was a DJ for 4.5 years, and I was also chief engineer at one time, and just generally involved pretty heavily with the student radio station, and minored in philosophy. When I graduated, I started working at Qualcomm for 3.5 years, and now I'm at NASA Jet Propulsion Laboratory as the lead electromagnetic compatibility engineer on the next Mars rover, Mars 2020.
Hi everyone, my name is Daniel. I'm a senior software engineer at a blockchain startup called Sagewise in Long Beach. I graduated in 2008 and I did PE and math as a minor, so that's why I was there for an extra year. I should have actually graduated in 2007.
Great. So just to let you know, our last panelist, Stephen Collins, he will be running late, so we're hoping he's going to be able to make it sooner when he mentioned he was going to come. So there is a slight chance he may not make it, but he did mention that he would be able to just share some of his experiences at a later point. So so we're hoping, we did save a seat for him, so we're hoping he will make it. So I'll just start us off by asking each of you the same question, and then afterwards it'll be an open time for you all to ask your questions. If you could just describe just your career journey and how it led to what you're currently doing. So maybe I know you guys already kind of mentioned some of that, but maybe just start off with how you first started off and what led to what you're currently doing.
Can I start, Daniel?
Oh yeah, I'll start. So I was supposed to go into defense. That was like the plan. But I graduated in 2008 when everything just crashed, and there weren't any jobs out there. I think I remember like strolling by. I don't remember if it was the engineering office. Somewhere I saw a bulletin with a flyer that said, apply here to the Los Angeles Department of Water and Power, the utility company. And I was like, sure, I'll do it. And it was through that I actually got my foot in the door into actually having a job after college. I didn't have any internships, so it was hard to sell myself that way in terms of having experience. So they took me, and I actually did network engineering. So I don't know how many of you are familiar with network engineering. Okay, I'm going to take that as a no. So that's basically a branch of engineering that involves setting up all kinds of network equipment, the kinds of equipment that actually gets information from your computer out to the net, and it allows you to communicate with all other computers, really. So I got involved with building networks for that company, and I did that for 5 years, trying to get really good at my job. And at the same time, I was like, I really like doing software. So I tried to bridge the two together at work, but they didn't let me do that. So there was some restriction about like, you can only be an engineer, you can't be like a software developer. So after I had built enough confidence to do my own program and build some apps, I decided I would leave that company and become a software engineer. That's where I'm today.
So I started, the story kind of has to go back even kind of before USC, when I thought going into college that I was going to do music recording, and I was going to be like a recording engineer in a studio, and EE was just the backup. So, and I figured a lot of recording engineers were EEs, so I was like, oh, I'll do that. And as I got into deeper into engineering, I really started to like it. I said, hey, physics is pretty cool. I like electromagnetics, all sorts of other kinds of like math and ODEs and PDs, and it just got deeper and deeper into the rat's nest that was electrical engineering. And I still kind of thought I would be a recording engineer, and then I saw, my junior year, I saw an internship posting at Qualcomm for an audio engineering internship and said, hey, that's a pretty cool bridge into the things that I like to do, and did that for between junior and senior year. It was okay, wasn't great, and then they asked me to come back, not the audio engineering team, but a different team. I almost didn't get another internship, but I was able to talk to enough people at my former internship, like in HR, to help them find me another opening in it was like quality engineering. Did that, it was fine, it was okay. And then between my senior year and my master's, actually no, it was my beginning of my master's degree, they called me and said, hey, do you want a full-time job doing that thing you did when you were an intern? I said, sure, because that's a lot more money than I'm making now, and like those are a lot of zeros, and I was like, yeah, sure, let's do that. Not really trying all that hard to guide my career at that point. I was just like, that's a great job. That's it's a good place to start a career. And Qualcomm was great. San Diego was really nice. So did that for 3.5 years. I was a reliability engineer actually, so similar to my internship, but not quite. And after 3.5 years, I kind of felt like I got good enough at what I did, where I felt like if I stayed in that job, I would just keep doing more of the same thing. And so I decided to leave just because I was getting kind of bored. So just on a whim, applied to JPL and got a job there. And been there for about 4.5 years. And it's been kind of the opposite experience. It's been very stimulating and learning something new every single day. Been there for 4.5 years, and I feel like I always have a question like, actually, this is new. I'm going to have to do some research. I have to crack open those notebooks from like sophomore year or something to figure something out. So that's where I am now.
I'm a little distracted because my former classmates who graduated with me just walked in. I haven't seen one of them since graduation. So I forgot to mention that while I was here at USC, I was also very involved with the Society of Women Engineers, and I joined as a freshman, and I basically was very active and held several leadership positions throughout my 4 years. And one of the events that I was in charge of for a couple of years was the Evening with Industries. And those are twice a year, and we just invite a bunch of different companies. The biggest one we held had like 25 different companies, and you sit with a recruiter, and basically I was running around one night. It was fall of junior year, and I was running around that night, and I was supposed to be seated with Northrop Grumman, but just a lot was going on, so I didn't get a chance to sit with them. And when you're an officer in these organizations, your role is to really just like make sure the event is going well. It's not really there for you to benefit from necessarily. You just have to make sure everything's running smoothly. So I'm running around, and then at the very end of the night, the Northrop lady who was at the table literally grabs my arm, and she's like, when you're done running around, like, walk over and give me your resume. And I was like, okay. And I didn't even have a resume with me that night because that was not my objective. So I walk up to her when I was done, like, cleaning up and everything, and she was like, we're gonna set up an interview tomorrow, and I was just like, it was just so unexpected. And my point in this story is not that it was luck or anything, but a lot of these companies, they know that you're going to a good university, and they know that you have this engineering degree, and that by itself means that you've taken all these difficult classes. But it's the soft skills that come through these extracurriculars that you learn and you gain confidence. So just her observing me walking around and like make sure everything was going well was impressive to her without even seeing my resume or anything. So I did interview, and I got an internship for the summer after my junior year, which is perfect because that leads to your full-time job usually. So what's nice about Northrop, if they do want you to come back, they do offer, if you are near a local campus, they let you work remotely as an intern during the school year, or you can come if you have extra time, actually come on campus. So they offered me to come back during the school year as well, and senior year I was a part-time student both fall and spring semester. So for the fall I was like, I'm not sure, I'm taking like my hardest classes, I'll let you know in the spring, maybe I'll come back in the spring. So that's what I did. I came back for a second internship in the spring, same team that I worked on in the summer. And then what was awesome too, at the end of my internship, but 2 weeks before the end of my first summer internship, they had already given me a job offer for after I graduated. So that was something that I didn't have to, like, I had no stress senior year. I could still look around for other jobs if I really wanted to. But it was really nice to know that after graduation I was set. And I really do think that my involvement with the Society of Women Engineers really helped with this. So I've been at Northrop for 2.5 years now, and I've been working on this advanced HF program for 2.5 years. And recently, a new program that's starting up called ESS, Evolved Strategic SATCOM, and it's like in a proposal. It's not even in a proposal stage. It was a study, and in the next couple months, it's going to be a proposal and be set up for bidding. So it's a really exciting, busy time. And it's the flip opposite of what I've been working on up till now. I've been on a program that's at the very end of its life cycle, and we're like pretty much done with integration and test, and we're just ready to launch. And now I'm on the flip end, and it's like everyone at the same time. We're a very small team of like 5 people, and nobody knows what's going on, even the like senior directors. So it's really awesome to just all be very fresh to this situation and be learning together and solving all these problems all at the same time. So that's been my journey so far. Just 2.5 years, but it's been really exciting.
Let's see. So I had actually internships all throughout college. So I interned at Raytheon the summer before I started at USC, and that was because of a scholarship that I received from them. They offered me an internship along with the scholarship, and I said, sure, I'll figure out what actually working as an engineer looks like. So I worked there for a couple of summers. I did a internship with the government in DC for a summer, and decided that working directly for the federal government was really not what I wanted to do. And then I, being really involved in IEEE, we brought some folks from the Jet Propulsion Laboratory to campus to present, and prior to the career fair, just as here's all about JPL. And the woman in HR that I was working with to organize that said, hey, send us your resume, we're setting up on-campus interviews. So very much like Jasmine, not anticipating that I would actually be interviewing for anything or sending her my resume. I had just been trying to make sure that the JPL information session went as smoothly as possible, and so they set up an on-campus interview for me, and so I got a internship with the Jet Propulsion Laboratory, which carried over into being a part-time student during my master's program, working part-time at JPL and getting my master's degree part-time that last year. So that was my plan. I was going to go work at the Jet Propulsion Laboratory after I graduated with my master's in December, and it was going to be great because I really enjoyed what I was doing at JPL, Earth Mission Concept Design. But one of my mentors really strongly recommended that I go ahead and interview anyway, because you should always have an idea of what your value is to companies, so that you have a better opportunity to negotiate for your starting salary. Because your starting salary is like, that's what's going to take you for the next, however many years you're at that particular company. So I did. I was thinking, oh, this is for negotiating. But I had a really, really great interview at the Aerospace Corporation. And they called me back to interview with the second group. And that went really well, and it was really exciting. And then they called me over Thanksgiving break to come and interview for a third job. And I was like, okay, well, the last 2 have been so good, it'll be great. So the Monday or Tuesday after Thanksgiving, I walked in, and the hiring manager said, so, do you have any questions about the job rec? And I said, could I see a copy of it? Because I don't actually know what job you're interviewing me for. Since HR set up the interview without, I hadn't actually applied to anything in particular. So he was very nice. He had a copy, and he let me read it. And I looked through, and I was like, well, I am not qualified for this position, so this will be a great practice interview, which I think goes to show you just have to have a good attitude about your interviews. Always be prepared. Don't do what I did. Be prepared. Know what job you're interviewing for. But even if you read through the qualifications and you're like, well, this is just going to be practice. I went back to sit in the cafe downstairs and told all of my friends that was probably the worst interview I've ever been on. So we'll see how that goes. And JPL finally interviewed me and did offer me a position, but the Aerospace Corporation offered me any of the 3 jobs that I had interviewed for, including the one I was not qualified for. After calling the hiring manager and saying, "Are you sure?" And he said yes. To me, that was a sign that if a company was willing to take a chance on me being fresh out of graduate school and hiring me into a position that I was probably one of the least qualified people that they had interviewed, but they saw something in me that made them want to hire me, that was a sign that this was a manager that I wanted to work for because he was going to be interested in developing me, and this was a company that I would be willing to commit to. So I took that job doing launch. So I worked in the Office of Space Launch for 7 years, doing a variety of positions in that area. I got to work through 13 launches, including being the mission engineer for one particular satellite for 2 years. So when that launched, I looked around and I said, I've done every position I can possibly do in this area without being a manager. So I'm going to go to our engineering and technology group. I spent 2 years in our engineering and technology group where I did a variety of systems engineering tasks, including designing, developing, building, and launching CubeSats. So we had basically, in the 2 years that I was in that role, we went from putting the contractor on contract to launching 2 of the 3 CubeSats, which for anyone who knows anything about the aerospace and defense industry, launching something that quickly, building something that quickly, and then launching it and putting it into operation is just incredible. So I went from that job to a role in our international programs group. So we have international partners on several of the Air Force satellites. So I spent almost 3 years working on those, developing those relationships and establishing new ones. So the Air Force is working to put a payload on a Norwegian satellite, and that was a concept that I came up with. And it was probably one of my proudest things that I did. EPSR, yes, EPSR, going on the Norwegian satellites. That was me. So I got married last April, and the day after I got back from my honeymoon, I had an email saying, we'd like you to apply to the job that I'm currently in. So people are watching what you're doing, both while you're in school and once you start working. People you don't know are watching, and so if they see something that impresses them, they're going to reach out to you. So I've been very lucky to have gotten this management, it's my first management position, working on AEHF, and it's really exciting. It is a production program that's winding down, so that part's a little sad, but we get to put the 5th and 6th satellites into the constellation and deliver an incredible capability to the U.S. Department of Defense. So it's been kind of a very long career doing a variety of things, so but it's all been really worthwhile. All thanks to getting my electrical engineering degree here at USC.
So, is it my turn? I'm Steven. I'm super late, and it's all my fault, and I apologize. Seems like we're doing introductions and like a couple minutes on where we are now and how we got there. All right. So, I graduated from USC Electrical Engineering in 2014. When I was here, I was kind of like a transfer student. I was in the 3-2 engineering program. Is anyone here involved in that? So I actually did 3 years at a college on the East Coast. It's called Gordon College, and I studied physics there, and then I came out here for 2 years to specialize in my chosen field of engineering. So I picked electrical because my interests are in energy systems, electricity, renewable energy. I took a year off between high school and starting college and was volunteering in different places around the world, and that's where I first became interested in helping to develop systems for electricity, because I realized that even though I grew up in the United States where electricity is available pretty much 100% of the time, there's over 1 billion people still. Actually, I read recently, this is a stat that kind of blew my mind. There are as many people in the world today who don't have access to electricity as there were when Thomas Edison first invented the light bulb, just because of the increase in the global population. So that's something that I've been motivated by for 10, 11 years now. When I was here at USC, some of the things that I was involved with that have been the most impactful in terms of my journey after school would be, we did a program in 2012, 2013 called the Solar Decathlon. It's a competition that's still ongoing, but I don't think that USC has put a team together for it in recent years. But you basically bring together a bunch of engineering students, a bunch of architecture students, and then students from other schools as well. And you actually build a house, a 1,000 square foot house that's fully solar powered, and then you build it on campus, and then you take it apart and you move it to a competition site for a couple weeks. Usually it's about 20 schools, and tens of thousands of people, they come, they tour the houses. The houses are being assessed for everything from their architecture to the design of their energy systems. And so that was a really good experience for me to start to like cross borders between specifically the electrical engineering, but also more broadly what's going on in the other disciplines of engineering, like mechanical, and what else is going on in the other departments of the school. I would encourage all of you to seek to find opportunities to not just make friends with students who are in other schools at the university, but to actually try to work on something with them, to try to get something accomplished where their different approach or their different perspective, at first it would probably surprise you. That was my experience. I was often surprised at how the architecture students approached a problem, but you learn to start to look for other perspectives earlier on. And so that was something that was very useful to me, and it was also just a really compelling student experience for me to talk about when I was then looking for career opportunities and I wanted to get started in my career. The first place I went after I graduated was actually related to the summer internship I had between my junior and senior year. It was with Southern California Edison, the electric utility here for most of Southern California. USC is actually part of Los Angeles Department of Water and Power, which is the city of LA, but most of the rest of Southern California is covered by Southern California Edison. And I was able to get into their research group for a summer internship, and that led to a full-time job when I graduated. And I worked for about 2.5 years in the Advanced Technology Department at SCE. And it was a really fun job because I got to spend all my time thinking about what's going to be happening in this space that I care about for the next 3 to 10 years. And that was a time when electric vehicles were really starting to come more quickly onto the market in California especially. It was a time when companies like Tesla were announcing that they weren't just making cars, but they were a battery company, and they had an intention to actually use batteries to support the electric grid. It was a time when all of the tax credits were still available for solar, but the cost of solar had fallen so much that solar was really starting to pick up speed as well. So there were all these changes that were happening to the electrical grid, and a lot of people who had watched that system develop over the last 100 years said, oh, this is too much too soon. We don't think we can handle all these changes. Let's just kind of push to slow everything down. And it was fun to be kind of a younger person and a little bit more optimistic, and have some of my skill sets that I'd worked on both in class and in my summer internship, and to be able to put models together and demonstrate that, for example, that this neighborhood or this circuit can handle more solar. It's not going to have the voltage rise or the adverse effects that so-and-so is concerned about, and we can demonstrate that empirically. So that was a really cool job. I ended up leaving that job in 2016, towards the end of the year, to take an offer with a startup company. It's where I'm currently employed. We're called 360 Power Group. And I actually met the founders of 360 Power Group when I was a student at USC. I was taking my, I think it's like BUED 301. It's like the business and entrepreneurship class. And I had a ton of fun in that class. And I remember towards the end of the semester, our professor sort of said, we've been looking at a lot of cases, we've been hearing from a lot of people, but it's really time to go see what that looks like in action. So go out, find an entrepreneur who you can get coffee with, somebody you don't know, but somebody who's doing something that you genuinely are interested in doing yourself, and just try to interview them and sort of write about how their experience as an entrepreneur reflects some of what we've talked about in this class. And so I went to the Los Angeles Clean Tech Incubator list of portfolio companies, and I just started cold calling. And I was like, hey, I'm a college student, I'm at USC, can I do my homework with you? And I probably emailed 10 or 12 companies. I heard back from, I think, 2 or 3. And the only one that really worked out was meeting the founders of 360 Power Group. They invited me out for lunch, and I ended up talking with them for a couple hours. And I was fascinated by the technology. They basically invented a new form of electric generator, a permanent magnet generator. And they were describing to me a little bit of its architecture and their vision for deploying it for electrification, for sort of addressing that billion people that I'd been motivated to think about all along. And so I met them when I was a student. They were really small, really lean, still trying to secure some of their intellectual property. But they raised a little bit more money in 2016, and they basically offered me a job, which in some ways was perfect because my girlfriend, who I had started dating at USC, took a job at Disney and was living in Hollywood and working in Burbank. And my SCE job was in Orange County, and I was living there, and I was a little bit done with the Los Angeles long distance. So the opportunity to take a new job and move up, and we got married the next year, and life's great. But the job has also been, great's not the right word, the job's been interesting. I've learned so much in the last couple of years. There's 4 of us now. We're an extremely small team. I would recommend, while you're still young, if you have any interest in trying to do something from the ground up, give it a shot. I don't think you'll regret it. But I have had to wear a lot of hats that I wasn't trained to wear. My engineering jobs were satisfying in the same way that school was satisfying, where it was like I had a pretty clear understanding of what I needed to do. I could do it. There was a pretty clear set of objectives, or a pretty clear rubric that my performance could be measured against, and I could be happy and other people could be happy if I met or exceeded what that looked like. In the startup environment, that does not exist. It just doesn't. And so things are constantly changing. We're changing our plans, we're changing our approach, and then there's all this stuff from like, we just put a partnership together to go into India. What we're going to be doing is a biogas to electricity conversion project, and then on the same site using that electricity to power refrigeration for produce and water purification processes. So it's going to be this sort of site where you can bring your spoiled produce or your animal waste. That'll get converted into electricity, clean water, and refrigeration for the other produce So in a lot of rural areas, there's a huge need for preservation of your food. So that sort of addresses the food waste issue, the electricity issue, the water issue. It's very cool. I'm very excited, but we've had to pivot a lot. And I've been doing things from like helping to form a new partnership in a foreign country, traveling over there a few times, like random like pitch decks, logo design. I'm like stretching my graphical muscles a little bit. Our IP portfolio is growing really fast because we're filing in a bunch of different countries because we have this intention to go internationally. And what I didn't know when I was a student was I figured, okay, you've got a cool idea, you write up a patent, you pay some lawyers to like kind of put their stamp on it, and then you're good, right? It's absolutely not the case with patents. You send stuff in, and then every patent office on the planet wants to challenge every nuanced detail of everything that you've submitted. And so I end up spending a lot of my time reviewing our company's patents in light of some specific objection from some specific examiner in Russia or China or Taiwan or Mexico or wherever. And that feels like a full-time job, but it's fun. And then we have to keep raising money. And so a lot of what I do is I look at the technical product that we've been trying to build and trying to drive the cost down on. And I say, if we can continue to drive the cost down on this, will we ever become profitable? And what does that look like? And how do we convince other people that it's a realistic proposal that this will become profitable so that they invest the money that we all need kind of to make that happen. So, sorry, that was probably long and rambling, but sort of where I've been and where I'm at.
That was great, everyone. Yeah, it was really good to hear all your career journey. So now, yeah, I'd like to have you guys ask any questions you may have for the panelists. So just feel free to raise your hand if you have any questions.
Hi, actually I'm a senior right now, so I almost done the school. I take the 301, 330, 201, 109, all the course already. So actually when I viewed the position online about the EE, I found the responsibility of the jobs, and I see there's a less connection between what we learn in the school and the actual skill they are really looking for. So how to, overcome this barrier to really become a very qualified engineer, and how to prepare the technical interview.
So I would say that, again, going back to extracurriculars, if you have any like design experience or any organizations that you've been a part of, those all really help. And if you don't, then I would just focus on the projects you've had in your classes, and like your senior design, that can be like a last resort. This is what I've done in my senior design, and you can talk about that in your interviews. Technical interviews wise, you need to look up the company and what they do, and just have an understanding of what kind of electrical engineering you need to focus on. It's such a big field. And then there's always like sample questions that you can Google. Behavioral wise, that's very easy to tackle and prepare for. You can just find a bunch of lists of different behavioral questions, and usually they focus on times that you were challenged and group work and working with people, because it's really important that once you enter the workforce, you're able to communicate with different kinds of people. So behavioral wise, it's not too difficult to prepare for interviews. It's technical that you need to do a little bit more research about the company and what kind of engineering.
Yeah, I agree. I think the technical, you have to know what kind of technical questions they'll ask. You have to do some research into what that kind of a job is. Like if you're applying to a VLSI job, then you should probably totally brush up on VLSI stuff. But a lot of managers kind of know, especially if you're coming out of school, that that you're a little bit limited. They'll be somewhat sympathetic to the fact that you've just gotten out of school, and of course they don't expect you to have used this environment and this thing because your school didn't have that license or something, or they'll be somewhat forgiving, and so they want to make sure that you kind of meet a baseline level of competence. And I think another thing that they're really looking for is to see what you're like as a person to work with, because I think a lot of my interviews that I've had were technical, sure, to make sure that I knew that I wasn't just a I don't know, an engineer that didn't know anything, and they mostly wanted to make sure that I was somebody that they could see themselves talking to a lot every day and working with, and I think that's a big thing too, is to just present yourself as somebody that that's easy to work with, and as well as technical, because those two things definitely matter. At least I would say they matter almost as much, unless it's a very, very focused thing, like, yeah, totally, this is the only thing you'll do, we don't care what you like as a person, which is very few jobs that are like that. I would say most of the time it's like, I don't know, half and half, but a good amount of it is presenting yourself as somebody that can communicate and talk and work with them.
I think willingness to learn, right? So a lot of the technical problems that somebody's going to ask you during an interview they want to understand what your problem solving thought process is, right? How do you approach the problem? How do you allocate your time? How do you...
What questions do you ask?
Right, what questions do you ask back to the interview to get that clarification, right? So they're not necessarily looking for the solution, they're looking for your approach to the problem. I will say, my husband is a software engineer. I know, Daniel, you can probably speak to this. Software engineering jobs, like, you will have a coding challenge and they will ask you to code, and they want a solution that works. So if you're CEC, I know someone said they were CECS, if you're looking for like a job at Google or Apple or Facebook and they give you a coding problem, they are not just looking for your approach to the problem, they want a solution that works. So,
yeah, like Ed was saying too, you learn almost everything on the job. I took one wireless comm class and didn't teach me what a military satellite would do. So you do again, and like Rachel said, willingness to learn, very, very important. And willingness to really do anything. As a new hire, you can't really say no to anything. Or as an intern even, like if they give you a task and it's very tedious and you have to go through hundreds of documents, that was one of my first assignments, you have to have a positive mindset about it and be like, from these hundreds of documents that I'm reading, I'm actually learning a lot about the satellite. So it is just a lot on the job as well. And like Ed said, they know that, and it is just, they do want to see that you're a problem solver and that you're persistent and you don't give up if you can't find a solution.
I have a question for you, Stefan.
Yeah.
So how much of what you learned in class did you end up applying at your job at SoCal Edison?
At SoCal Edison, there was definitely a technical crossover from some of the 400 level classes in like power systems analysis and linear algebra. But I don't want to overemphasize the classwork, because I think what was being said just a moment ago about willingness to learn and your approach to problem solving, in my experience, at least in the real world, there's just no way, unless you have aspirations to work an incredibly like rote, repetitive, and boring job, there's no way that your classroom education can perfectly prepare you for the demands of a work environment. My aspiration for myself and for all of you is that you will be working in creative and explorative fields of engineering, where if our professors and the textbook authors knew what was at the forefront of your employer's mind at whatever year you're working there and already had it in the book, it already would not be as interesting of a problem to be working on. And so I think that some of the higher level math and some of the, if you look at some of the master's classes, let me try to generalize this. There are classes that undergraduate students can take in electrical engineering, and I don't know how they do it now. When I was a student, there was like a disc or some sort of picture, and like if you wanted to go to big power, you went this way. If you wanted to go to little power, you went this way. If you wanted to go to like computer stuff, you went this way. Maybe that still exists, but each of those have their own specialty master's programs that are more specific. And those classes that are kind of crossover, where you might have some master's students, in my experience, those are the ones where you might actually be using software, you might actually be learning techniques that are directly relevant to a workplace. But by and large, I think the teamwork, the communication, the approach to problem solving. Those are the sorts of skills that can be translated to that forefront that I was trying to describe, that almost continues to stay relevant, even as the methods and everything else change and evolve.
I guess once you're within the workforce or applying for, is it possible to be an electrical engineer and not a master programmer?
I've never programmed in my job.
Yeah.
I don't program.
Okay.
Yeah. I very lightly program in my job.
Very lightly,
I-
I wouldn't call it programming.
Yeah.
Excel, yeah. I mean,
Yeah,
there's
Excel.
there's some like Excel programming.
Excel, VBA, and MATLAB a little bit, tiny bit.
I just see a lot of positions that are really asking for some sort of experience in like more than one language sometimes.
Yeah, I think there is definitely the trend towards, wanting at least some experience with it, because maybe the job isn't primarily focused in coding or anything, but sometimes there will be a team, like for example on my team, we do electromagnetics. Electromagnetics is, it's equations that are 100-something years old, but turns out the best way to solve those, even though it's pure physics, it's in a computer. And so sometimes I have to write a little bit of code to do something, or like they're saying Excel. So if that's something that you're not interested in, I would say a little experience doesn't hurt, but I wouldn't be scared of not being able to find a job because I couldn't do it.
I think you just need to have an understanding of how reading a language works and like just have a little bit of the like programmer mentality. But definitely I had the same experience when I was looking for jobs too, that almost every job rec said something about programming. But good thing is our curriculum has a C++ class, and then the ITP department, you can also take like 2-unit Java classes or whatever you like. And those are like not that time consuming, and I did a couple, I think I did Python and Java here. But I would just add those so that you can just feel comfortable about meeting those job requirements, and then you might be surprised that you don't even need to use, like the position that I'm now working on also said that you need programming, and I truly do not program. So sometimes they exaggerate those job regs.
I would, to just harp on that, I would take the posting with a grain of salt. Sometimes they'll shoot for the moon in terms of candidates, and if they can find it, great, right? But if they don't, they'll be like, well, this person's pretty good.
There's a couple of things. So I don't want to sound cynical here, but I think it's important. It took me a long time to understand this. I still don't understand it, but it's important to try to understand that there is this entire department at most big companies called human resources that's involved in getting you a chance to get hired, and there are these artifacts that are part of that process that I don't always think are beneficial. And one of those artifacts is that somebody who really doesn't know how to program in human resources is trying to figure out if someone who's graduating from college knows how to use some software tool that the person who's got the job posting says that they're interested in having somebody to talk about. So I'm not telling you to lie or misrepresent yourself or do anything you don't feel comfortable with, but if you've taken just the core curriculum that a great school like USC offers, and you've taken that C++ class, and you are like, that was a hard class, whatever, I don't know if I want to do that in my job, just put it on your resume. Just put it on say, like, I know how to do this, and then when the HR person screens you, be like, yes, I took the class, I passed, and I'm ready. And then if you're finally talking to the actual person who's hiring for the position, you can say, hey, how much, of the work day is C++? And if they're like, yeah, this is a job where we need somebody to just crank through it for like 7.5 hours a day, then you could say, okay, like,
To be honest,
I kind of
it's
struggled
not
in that
even.
class. That's where your like integrity can shine through. But don't screen yourself out ahead of time, because that's what all of the automated HR systems will do for you. So like, don't take yourself out of the running. I do think that a lot of like entry level engineering positions, there is just kind of like grunt work, and probably 50 years ago you gave somebody like a protractor and some like number 2 pencils and said like, get to work on the drawings, and the like 2019 equivalent of that is like, hey, and usually it's not like the advanced software, that's what like the higher level engineers get to work on. It's usually like, hey, we use this clunky thing that's kind of like the C++ you learned, but nobody at your school knows how to use it because it's only used here, because we only keep it because all of our XYZ, like, whatever is tied up in it and we haven't migrated it out. So, like, Joey, the engineer who used to work on it, is going to teach it to you so that he can go do something else. So, like, just if you've learned one language, then that means Joey has a chance of being able to teach you how their system works, and then Joey's happy, the hiring manager's happy, and you've got your first job, and you can kind of prove yourself as a hard worker. Okay? That's my view on coding.
It's really, with anything, right? With anything on job recs, it really comes down to they're looking for that. I have some amount of knowledge, right? We all had to take one programming class, right? So you have that lowest level of knowledge, and you can always build on that. You know, every single system has software, right? So even if you don't want to program, you want to be able to talk to a software engineer and know that they are not completely BSing you, right? Because as you move throughout your career, things that you are working on from a hardware perspective are going to be entirely dependent on that software engineer delivering their product on a timely basis. And you want to know enough about what they're working on that you can ask the right questions. So you might not be the one programming or actually working on the code, but you want to be able to understand it. And that is why it's so important that you take at least the one CS class and you do well in it, and you have that as a skill set that you can rely on going forward.
One really quick thing to add on to what Steve and Rachel have been saying. So these automated systems, a lot of big companies do just have like an automated system that just screens for buzzwords in your resume. So that's what Steven is saying, where you might not even make it through that screening process if you sell yourself short and say, oh, I'm not a master of C++. So anything that you've had any experience with, put it on your resume, list it in the order of proficiency, and then when the time comes, like Steven was saying, that's when you can explain it a little bit more. So.
For the three of you that work in aerospace and defense, if you weren't a citizen but really wanted to work in the industry for an internship, what should you do?
I'll do the easy part. So at JPL, they're a little bit less concerned because not everybody has a clearance there. I think probably 20% of people at JPL for certain very specific projects have clearance. So as long as you can prove that you're not a troublemaker, like if you go through an FBI system, it's like, hey, yeah, that person didn't rob a bunch of banks or something, then you can show that you're going to work or on path to being like a legal permanent resident or something.
So I should apply even though it says you have to be a U.S. citizen on the application?
If it says you have to, then that's a trickier one. But yeah, I think in aerospace, I would say JPL's on the more relaxed side.
I would gravitate towards NASA and JPL,
Yeah.
and maybe SpaceX, but or like Boeing has a commercial side, but companies like Northrop and Raytheon, Lockheed, Aerospace Corporation, they're a lot more limited.
If the job rec says that you have to have that you have to be a U.S. citizen, the automated screening system, right, that Stephen was talking about is going to kick you out if you're not. If you answer no to that question, they're not even going to see your resume. you know, so find those positions that don't say that. Find the positions that don't have a requirement for the ability to get a clearance or a current clearance, and apply to those. It's probably the best option. And again, yes, as Jasmine said, definitely steer towards the NASA or the commercial side.
I had a question for Jasmine and Stephen. And this is kind of more towards just, they're kind of related, but as an E, you know, it's kind of the umbrella major. You get to see a lot of different things and how different things work. So, Jasmine, if you get to see kind of how systems are integrated together by looking at the different disciplines, being able to look at that bigger picture, do you ever feel like, you know, given the some billions of dollars that we have for this project, it's kind of easy, you know, like, do you ever get to break it down that way? Looking at the different components, being able to see the bigger picture that this is going to be delivered, given a some billion-dollar budget, given a competent employment group, like, would you say, like, you'd be able to oversee a project like that since you understand maybe at least the fundamentals of the different pieces?
I think so. Systems engineering is a really cool discipline, and coming from USC, every time I come back to recruit,